Welcome back to Mac Voices. This is the Talk of the Mac community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. And I want you to also welcome back Mr. Jeff Carlson. This time, the hat he's wearing is as the author of the iPad Pocket Guide from Peach Pit. Jeff, it seems like you do books in bunches or something, because that seems to be what we do. We don't talk about one, we talk about two at a time.
Yeah, that's how it's worked out lately. I mean, in this case, I can blame Apple because since I had done the previous two editions of the iPad Pocket Guide, I knew that as soon as Apple released the new third generation iPad, that Peach Pit would probably want a book to go along with it, and it sort of goes down the chain. Barnes and Noble says, "All right, Apple just announced this thing. When can we get our book?" And you're like, "Well, we have to actually, do it, like create it." And I mean, I think from start to finish, it took about 3 weeks to update this book because it had to be done like right away. And so, it's just kind of how the market works. Because if you don't give it to Barnes and Noble when they want it, then they may not shelve your book at all. So it's kind of one of those fun things. But I knew that something was going to be coming and had sort of blocked it out because of course we heard all the rumors about the new iPad, and so it was just a matter of, okay, what is it actually going to be, and hit the ground running. So thanks, Apple. I don't like to sleep.
yeah that sleep is highly overrated. So you mentioned that this is a revision, and that means that I have to ask, because I've been asking a lot of the authors about iPad books, is this just for the new iPad owner, as in the new third generation iPad owner, or is it just for anyone who is new to the iPad, whether it's a first or second generation hand-me-down or something bright and brand new and shiny?
It actually works for any of them. The hardware issues in the book, I focus on the third generation. So talking specifically about the camera and things like that, the Retina display. But those are also just sort of specs. And so the way I discuss, let's say, how to use the camera and how to shoot and review photos, like that all applies whether you are using a new iPad, an iPad 2, and to some degree an original iPad, even though it doesn't have a camera, but the information about viewing photos. And so I mean, it's in a sense it's an iPad iOS 5 book, because that's what's really changed from the last edition, was that we went from iOS 4 to iOS 5 and all of the things that are different in there. So and that's also partly why we didn't want to call it the iPad third generation book or the iPad 3 book or something like that. So it's the iPad Pocket Guide third edition to kind of wrap all of that up together. So if somebody were to buy a brand new iPad 2, which is still for sale, this would be the book to get, because it will cover all of the software that will be on it.
I'm curious as to how you go about this, addressing new iPad owners. So many of us have had this now for so long, it's now part of our lives. In fact, you sometimes feel naked without an iPad or at least an iPhone on you, let alone a laptop. So, but there's still an amazing amount of people out there that have not experienced this. So where do you tell them to get started? I'm sure you help them with some of the mechanics of it.
Yeah, actually, the whole first chapter is really sort of geared to, if you have just bought an iPad for the first time, here's what you can expect. It walks you through the setup process, where you don't even need to connect to a computer anymore, and sort of assumes that, okay, let's all just start out from base 0 and then move up from there. That seemed to be the right way to go, particularly for this this series of books, this Pocket Guides, because it's like 264 pages, I think, all told, with the index and the front matter and all of that. So sort of had to address it to the widest possible audience. So if you know nothing about the iPad at all, if you just bought one or you got one for Christmas or something, you can definitely start without a clue. And I say that in the most positive manner that there can be. You can start as a blank slate and get up to speed, and then also learn. It's chock full of tips and real world lessons and things that I've used after using an iPad pretty much every day for 2.5 years now. So,
and I think it takes a certain mindset to get the most out of the new of the iPad, whatever generation. You pick it up, and obviously it's cool, and you've got the touch interface and all that. But you have to kind of remember that you have it. You have to remember what it's capable of, and that means being familiar with its I guess, stock capabilities that are then enhanced by all the apps and procedures and services out there that are available to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because, and we've had this discussion before. Well, you and I, and also like the Tidbit staff. Like you see somebody pick up an iPad, and there is very much like an intuitive nature about it. Is once they figure out they manipulate things with their fingers, then that leads to basically a nice baseline of knowledge of behavior on how to use it. So it's not like you're going to buy a new PC and sort of be stuck wondering, okay, now what do I do? You can pick up an iPad and just start using it. But it's also a computer in itself, and even though Apple has done an amazing job of simplifying things and making it warm and welcoming to people who may not have actually had very much computer experience in terms of a laptop or a Mac or a Windows desktop or anything like that, they can pick that up. But there's still a lot of stuff that the iPad does that they may just completely miss. I mean, a lot of things in settings, the multi-touch gestures, being able to, for example, take 3 or 4 fingers, slide up from the bottom, and view your little recents bar that has the last apps that you've opened. Things like that aren't intuitive necessarily, and unless you really want to just kind of poke around in Apple's help online or whatever, you may miss a lot of that. So that's what's great about being able to do a book like this, is I can go and find some of these things that are just not really obvious. I mean, as a quick example, I got a note from a relative of mine who, she'd been using an iPad for like a year, and got a copy of my book, looked it up, and only then realized that you can, tap and hold the E key, and it'll bring up other options for accented versions and things like that. And that like blew her away. I think we probably knew about that a long time ago because we read blogs and tips and books and things like that, but a lot of people don't, and they don't want to feel like it's their job to have to pick up all of these techniques just in the course of their day. So being able to have it all in a compact little book, I think makes it a lot easier for them, and more rewarding in the sense of, okay, here it is, or I just want to look up something. I don't want to have to dig through an online help system. And you go to the index, you find it, and there's your answer.
To take us not exactly off topic, but it does seem like there's a bigger market, I think, for some of these smaller, more focused guides or topic kind of books. It's we all used to buy those 300 and 400 page manual kind of books. Yes. That was everything you ever wanted to know about the program and would probably never use.
Yes. And as someone who's written a 1,000-page book, yes, I know what you mean.
I was not slandering anybody.
No.
Because they were necessary in a lot of cases. But now I think that a guide like this, and some of the Take Control books, and some of the other things that we've talked about here on the show, they are really the way things are going, because people just want to be able to pick it up, excuse me, and use these devices. And you're right, the iPad, for all its simplicity and all its intuitiveness, you still have to sort of get trained in the touch interface thinking with swipes and multi-finger gestures and, 1, 2, and 3 presses on the home button and, all those things that now are second nature. But if you don't know where to look, then you're not going to find them.
Yeah, and I also think that, if you don't know about all that stuff, you can still, get a lot out of an iPad. It's not like you're, it's not like the way you use it is broken or anything like that. But once you do start learning more about it, then it makes it better. It's sort of like if you've used Photoshop. Like I've used Photoshop for years, and I know, and I've written about Photoshop elements, and so like this is a field that I've been in. I know that there's still maybe 60% of the program that I've never touched or never needed to deal with, or there's a lot of depth there. And I think what's sort of amazing about the iPad being only 2 years old is that it has a lot of depth. And if you know where to look, you can find it. And if you don't want to look, that's fine. Like it's still a great device, and it'll still do all sorts of things. But it surprises people when they find out that they can do all sorts of other things. That like they know that they can download apps. They maybe don't know that they can edit PDFs or draw, or a lot of things that this ecosystem allows. And so having something that touches on that without having to be encyclopedic. I mean, not to sound like an old fogey, but it used to be that if you were writing any book about the internet, you sort of had to have like the history of the internet. Like here's how things started, and then there was file transfer utilities, and then bulletin board systems, and then HTML, like all this stuff, because you had to like lay down this foundation of knowledge in order to get up to speed. And so with the iPad, you don't have to do that as much, and it's nice because you can sort of get right to, all right, you want to find yourself on a map, here's how you do it. You want to get directions. You want to get directions how to get somewhere on a bus. Here's how to do it. So there's a lot to it, and it's nice to be able to touch on all that without, like you said, having the 400-page book that you're never going to open again.
Your point is very well taken. I'd like to think that most of us that have been living with the iPad since day one are kind of past that discussion or argument over, is this a content creation or a content consumption device? We're all convinced that it's both now. But if you're picking up an iPad for the first time, or maybe really starting to get into it in a little more depth, you need just a little hand-holding, or maybe a better way to say it is just a couple fingers pointing in the right direction to recognize the full capabilities and how to go about getting to those.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, if you've ever been with somebody when they first got an iPad or an iPhone, I remember when my mom first got one, she came up to visit, not because she got one, but she came to visit shortly after she'd gotten one. And, like, it sounds incredibly geeky, but we sat on the couch until midnight one night, just like looking at like, oh, well, like what apps do you have? And, well, here's this, solitaire game, and here's a thing that'll let you do this and that. And so, like, I would like to think that a book like this, or, any of the other sort of similar guides and such, are really like you're sitting down with a friend who knows a little bit more than you do, and you are, and your friend is like pointing things out to you. You're not having to go to school. You don't have to like memorize a bunch of stuff. It's like, oh, all right, here's somebody who knows about this, and he's my friend. He's going to show me some really cool stuff. So that's what I hope it is. That's what I think it is. But We'll see. If people start leaving reviews on Amazon and saying Jeff Carlson's not my friend, then I'll know that it's probably the wrong approach.
Please, folks, go to Amazon and tell people that Jeff Carlson is your friend.
Jeff Carlson is your friend.
Yes, Yes, he will be running for office next term.
We'll get buttons made up.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the office will be, but he'll be running for something.
Yeah,
Jeff, you mentioned settings, and I have to tell you, even now, there are times that settings, I guess maybe because we're so entrenched in the Macintosh, and you tend to think of things, application settings, as being in your preference entry on the menu, that now you have to kind of rethink that on the iOS devices, because so many settings are hiding under the settings entry as opposed to within the app itself. And that's a very different piece of the architecture that I know I've been able to help a number of people because they just can't find where to turn something on, off, or activate something. So is that something you get into in any kind of depth?
Yeah, because it's funny, the settings app is sort of a big catch-all, and I forget that there are app settings there. Partially because it's a little awkward to have apps put their settings in the settings app, because we're so used to just like keeping things bundled together, and it's sort of all over the map. You have some apps do keep their settings within the app, so you don't have to make that. And I can't remember what it was recently, but I was using an app that had both, and I'm going through, like, I'm tapping everything in the app that I can find. I'm like, I know there's a way to shut this off, or I can't remember if it was a sound or something, and I was just about to give up and say, forget it, and then I remembered, okay, the settings app. And you go there, and everything you see is all Apple-related stuff. And then you scroll down, and then you find the settings for each individual app, and there it was. And so it's, that's sort of ugly, but it's a reality that we have to deal with. So,
yeah, it's well, I'm not sure I agree completely that it's ugly. It's just different, and you sort of have to remember now. I don't know if there's a standard. I'm not an app developer, so I don't know if Apple gives guidelines as to what should be where. But you just sort of have to remember that there are two places you may want to look if you're looking for something that you think or that the app does that you haven't been able to access.
Right.
So what else is in here? Because I know what a challenge it is. And I don't think a lot of people understand what a challenge it is until they start taking questions from beginners. Yeah. To go back and think like a beginner, and think like, okay, this is my first time firing up this device, and what are going to be my first questions or my first issues? Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, that is a large part of the first part of the book because, again, assuming that you've never used an iPad before. When you do the setup process, there's actually a lot of those like questions and choices. Some things that you can put off, some things that you can't. So, like for example, you open it up brand new, it's nice and shiny, and you start doing the setup process, and it says, "Do you want to use iCloud?" I don't know. Do I? Like, is it this cool thing? Is it going to cost me money? Is it going to and I think that Apple makes a little bit of an expectation that someone will know what iCloud is, but maybe not. Or, if somebody currently has Mobile Me and hasn't, transitioned over, and now they're being asked on their iPad if they want to use iCloud, is that going to screw up their Mobile Me? And, so there are a lot of choices like that you have to make that I found myself, like answering and testing and, resetting my poor iPad so many times to go through and kind of demystify some of those things that, like you can't just skim over it all. And so that's kind of a big thing that's new in the book. Also, I'm just glancing through it because I have it here, and I put it all in the book so it wouldn't be in my head. using iCloud stuff to sync your data. I love being able to. In fact, when I had Mobile Me and was paying for it, I was mostly paying for it just so that I could, have my contacts on my calendars and my bookmarks on whatever device that I wanted. And that's still the case with iCloud, and I think that's still my favorite part of iCloud. But what if you want to share a calendar with somebody? My wife and I, we have a couple of calendars that we share between us, and it's not easy to just do that. I discovered that in order for me to get her personal calendar on my iPad, I basically had to subscribe to her iCloud account as a separate account, and then only turn on calendars for that. And there's no easy way to figure out how to make that work. So things like that are also new. And just looking at viewing photos, reading books and magazines. Now that Newsstand is sort of a new feature, things like that. Yes, this is where I trail off because I'm looking at my book. But
well, there's a lot in there that you're trying to keep track of.
Yes. That's it. That's right. Another good example. Security. That there's not very much information about security that you get when you first open an iPad, and so I talk about things like, do you want to encrypt the backup on your hard drive? Do you want to have a PIN code? Which you do, yes, you do that. That's the answer there for your iPad, because that encrypts the contents of your iPad. So what if somebody steals it? What if you lose it? Things like that. It's important to me because it's a mobile device that I carry with me anywhere, and if I were to lose it or if someone were to steal it, there's a lot of information in there. I use 1Password, an app for managing all of my passwords, and so there's a couple extra layers of security there, but I still don't, I want to make sure that all that stuff is nice and secure because, nobody wants any of that information to get out. And, it could. And so, what's very cool about the iPad, let's say, it gets stolen, someone breaks into my car, I can... sorry, that was a little break because I was thinking of a friend who did have a computer taken out of his car, and I was like, if it gets stolen out of my car, then I'm stupid for keeping it in my car. But anyway,
yeah.
The point being, if I have my iPad stolen, there are a couple of things that I can do, and if I know that there's no way I'm going to get it back, I can just wipe all the information remotely, immediately, and chalk it up to bad luck, and know that anything that I have on there, whether it's addresses or my calendar or apps or anything, just get erased. It actually only takes a minute because everything is encrypted. So that little block of what I just said is not something that you get from an iPad commercial or sort of your general usage of it, but it turns out to be really important. So I hope that answers your question in a very rambly way.
No, Jeff, it very much does. And in fact, the rambling part, I think, is beneficial because we do tend to think of all those things that we've all already done. I mean, I hit the button on my iPad and I have to enter a 4-number code to get into it. I don't think about the fact that I set that up at some point. That was already done. And you're right, that is the correct answer to the question. Yes, set it up. But all those little things that just, you had to walk before you ran with the iPad, and some of it is basic. And I love the fact that you cover security, because this is, you've carried phones before. You've probably maybe carried an iPhone, which has a lot of stuff. This is even a little bit different and a little more potentially dangerous if you would lose it. So, and you're going to carry it into places where you would never have carried a laptop.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier to leave than a laptop, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, or for somebody to swipe.
Yeah.
And I think what's also interesting is that I think for most of us, an iPad is a device that we keep with us for our own personal use, watching videos, reading books, things like that. But the reality is that there are a lot of iPads going into the corporate world now, and so there are issues. Like for example, getting your mail on a Microsoft Exchange system, that's possible. I don't know if many people may not realize that or may not care. They might think, oh, well, I just need to have my IT department take care of it. Well, maybe there's no IT department. Maybe that's just how it's set up. And you also have issues of, okay, like let's say I am a salesperson and I am finally able to ditch my laptop, my heavy chunky laptop that I've had to carry to run PowerPoint presentations for years. Now I have this iPad. Well, it's likely you probably have some sensitive material on there. You may have, keynote presentations of upcoming products, things like that. So, suddenly this is something that it's not just this, cutesy little thing to play Words with Friends on. This is something where if you lose it, you and your company could be in really deep doo-doo, So, not to say that my iPad Pocket Guide is suddenly the IT corporate solution, but it does cover all that stuff, and so it's the changing nature of the device and how people are buying it and using it that also goes into play.
At the risk of upsetting some of the IT people that listen to the show and watch the show,
IT people,
yeah, we're sorry for what we're about to say, but we've seen some IT departments resist the invasion of what they consider consumer technology, and when it does come in, they may not be completely up to speed on it if they're not Apple users. Again, that would seem a really strange statement to make, but I know of more than one circumstance personally where that is exactly the case. Yeah. And so if you're going to use your iPad for business, I don't want to scare you by saying you would be on your own, but you may be on your own. Mm-hmm. So you need to be well-versed, or at least know where to go to get some of these basic questions answered. Jeff's book is a perfect place, especially when we're talking about security, usability, maybe some basic troubleshooting in case you get in trouble one way or another. And and especially, Jeff, the remote wipe thing. I think that in relation to what we're talking about here, that's extremely, extremely important to know that you have that capability and how to implement it, because the last thing you want to do is lose a piece of hardware that costs that much. But that dollar number pales in comparison with what you may have stored on that iPad in the way of information.
Yeah. Yeah, and it even trickles down to things like, going back to the IT department. I think a lot of IT departments are now realizing that, okay, we need to support this, and they're learning, like what it's capable of. But let's say, for example, you need to check your corporate email, but your company is concerned about having secure connections and things. Well, the iOS built-in can handle virtual private networks or VPN connections. So even if you are at a coffee shop, which it could be someplace that, the guy or gal at the next table over could legitimately be running packet sniffing software on their computer and pull people's passwords and things like that from your kind of free wireless network. With a VPN set up on the iPad, that circumvents that, and I talk about how to set that up. Even if you're not even remotely paranoid, the capability is still out there and it's easy to implement, and so you don't have to worry about it.
And for the newbies out there, if Jeff just scared you with VPN or any of this, don't be. I mean, that's sort of the beauty of the iPad, that someone has recognized the kind of device it is and has made it easy for you so that you can add some security that is easy to implement and yet is very, very secure.
Yeah, and you don't have to have a big corporate infrastructure to do that. I mean, I'm a freelance writer. You're looking at the corporate infrastructure right here, and so
That's a pretty impressive job.
Thank you. But I use a company called Ytopia. They you pay them a modest amount every year or every month, and you can set up a secure digital connection over the internet, from the iPad, the phone, wherever. So you don't have to sort of say, "Oh, I don't work at a big company. That's not something that's going to affect me." Well, it might, and you need to think about whether that's appropriate, and use a service that will work for you. So.
Jeff, the thing about the iPad, I think, just like the iPhone, but the iPad even more so, is that when you fire up an app, the device becomes that app. It becomes whatever that app does, whether it's a game or whether it's an email machine or whatever, especially since we don't have true multitasking, so you can't have apps running side by side.
Right.
So given that, give us an idea of some what you think are essential apps or some really good things to get people started in taking full advantage or exploring maybe the full advantages of the iPad.
Well, I think it's funny that's like one of those categories where there are things that really show off the capabilities of the iPad. I mean, if you want to blow someone's mind, you get GarageBand, which I think is still like $5. You get GarageBand for the iPad, and you show them, even if you don't play music, how you can do synthesizers and guitars, and it's really an amazing app to show off that kind of stuff. I think now actually even iPhoto for iOS, although it has really sort of an odd interface at first, can do a whole lot of stuff. I know, to tie back to another book that I've done, I also just wrote a whole book called The iPad for Photographers, and all sorts of things that apps let you do. Here, I'll just cheat and look at my iPad here. But like, for example, something like Paper or Instapaper are two apps that I enjoy because you run across things during the day, a long article, an interesting something, this or that. You don't have time to read it right there. Use one of these apps to basically store it for later so that you can read it on your own time. So that's impressive. I think that it's sort of amazing that you can do things like I have an app called Plain Text. It's just a text editor, and this is sort of more focused on writing since I'm a writer, but it's something that ties directly into Dropbox. So whatever you save in plain text is saved to Dropbox. So then when you go back to your computer or your iPhone or your iPad or your iPod Touch, you can bring up that document. And like that's great for just like having a shared grocery list that you and someone else can access at any given time. So let's see. I'm trying to think of. I have a lot of like photo related things just because I've been focused on that. But or you have something like Star Walk, which I think that's the right one. It lets you see the night sky and get information about the stars and the constellations and all that. Well, it takes advantage of the iPad's gyroscope and accelerometer, so you can just hold the iPad up to the sky and basically get a superimposed information about what you're looking at. So you can say like what is that bright spot up there? And you look and you go, oh, well, that must be Venus, or and there's Mars. It's just just cool stuff like that. That I think is impressive and kind of flexes the capabilities of it.
Yes, Starwalk is a great example. You don't realize just how powerful this device is because it has an accelerometer, it has GPS, it has touch interfaces. It's completely portable. You don't realize, and I know I didn't until some of the developers started thinking outside the box, taking all of those capabilities, rolling them into something like Skywalk. Perfect example.
Yeah.
And then you come to realize, wow, this device really is something different. And I'm sorry, it's not just a content consumption device. It's a real learning tool. It's a real business tool. It's a real media tool. It's whatever you want to make it. And now with, I've lost track how many apps in the App Store,
600,000 or something.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say that even 10% of those apply to you in some meaningful fashion. That's 60,000 apps you have to choose from. So, there's almost, in my opinion, you're going to have a hard time not making the iPad work for you.
Right. Yeah. No, I would completely agree. I was also going to mention that, in terms of productivity, I just wrote an article for the Seattle Times that came out a couple of weeks ago. That was it was about PDF Pen from Smile Software, and they have an iPad app, and it totally saved my bacon on tax day, because I suddenly had some forms that I needed to have signed by me and my wife in order to transfer money to a separate account for retirement, whatever. I was here in my office. My wife was at her office. We needed to do this really quickly. She had the car. So, even a few years ago, the solution would have been I would have had to figure out how to, get these forms through email, print them out, get on a bus, drive to go down to my wife's office, have her sign it, find a fax machine somewhere, whether that would be, in her office or, going to a Kinko's, which, they charge you, 7 arms and a leg. And just to send a fax. Well, what we ended up doing was I got the paperwork in email. I signed it digitally using PDF Pen. I sent it to my wife. She signed it, just with her finger using PDF Pen on the iPad because she had her iPad with her. And she mailed it back, and that was it. It saved probably, 3 hours of annoyance. And then it was just done, and we did all of that on the iPad because she was at work, so she was on her work computer, so it wouldn't be right to send forms. All that stuff was just made instantly easier by having the capability to do this on the iPad. And if you think that it's just a consumption device, then you haven't actually done very much with it, I think. So,
agreed. and if I could give one tip, whatever apps you pick up, take just a second to pay attention to the capabilities they have. You may not use them all, but most of them are very easy to access. I would say, as a general rule, probably a higher percentage of the features of any given app are easier to access on the iPad than on even your Mac. So learn what those apps can do. I mean, gee, you've invested a whole 99 cents in these apps, so get your money's worth out of them. And if something doesn't do it for you for 99 cents, then delete it and go look for something else, because there are a lot of alternatives in most categories. Some are great. Sometimes everything in a particular category is great, but you need to find the one that works for you.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the whole category of text editors. Who would think there are dozens of apps that will do text editing, and they'll show markup in HTML and all sorts of things. Who knew this would be a big booming category on the iPad? Well, You know, there are a lot of people who just need to work with some text occasionally, and there are a lot of people who want to travel and not take a laptop with them. So, all of those cases show that you know the iPad just has an incredible breadth of experience that people are using it for. And again, you know, it's 2 years old. It's sort of amazing. Like this is early days for the iPad. So that's cool, and that's, you know, it's exciting, and that's what really draws me to update a book like this, because, you know, like, it's cool and I get to play with it and I get to like share stuff and you know, and like there's just a lot of good information, and especially with something like this where there are a lot of people who, you know, are now picking it up for the first time, and so it's great.
Jeff, to wrap this up, one thing that I'd like to ask for any advice you can offer to the viewers and the listeners. The one thing about an iPad that they are not going to be familiar with, I believe, is trying to type on that touch surface.
Yeah.
That takes some getting used to. Any tips or ideas other than just abandoning it and trying to get a Bluetooth keyboard? Any way to start to get used to that? Which I personally don't think is the right answer.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting that there are now like a lot of different keyboards, and, you know, like, if you just can't handle it, go for one of those, and they're not even as bulky anymore. But I think getting used to I don't know. Me personally, I find that I can type much better in landscape orientation than portrait, so wide. The buttons are bigger. But another thing that I think some people have no clue about is if you're holding it in the portrait orientation. You know, and like let's say you mostly just like use your thumbs, if you have, you know, large enough hands, I guess. You can slide the keyboard up, and it splits into a split configuration, so that your hands don't have to travel as far. And it's sort of amazing. Like, you would think that would screw up your brain, but it doesn't. Like it actually works. And you know, like there are things in there to help accommodate how you want to work, rather than, here's the keyboard, deal with it, you know. So I think that's one of the cool things about it. Otherwise, really, it's just practice. I know people who you know, they wrote entire novels in National Novel Writing Month. They wrote NaNoWriMo books on the bus on an iPad. I think, you know, once you get used to it, it really helps. For me especially, I have to remember to keep my thumbs low, because I keep hitting N when I want to hit the space bar, and, you know, it's just like one of those annoying things, but that's probably just me. Your viewers are like, wow, okay, that was a little specific.
Well, yeah, but it is, you know, and yeah. You skipped over the three dirty words: practice, practice, and practice.
Oh, yeah.
You know, sit down with the TV, and I don't care, start typing the Gettysburg Address or something, you know, and just keep doing it, and that's how many of us learned to type. It wasn't certainly a natural thing. You've learned to type by practice, and the more you did it, the better you got. And so this may be the one thing about the iPad that you sort of have to work at a little bit, but I think that you'll find it is well worth the effort. So, Jeff, how much is the book? Where do we find it? And now we've come to the point where we have to ask, what formats is it available in?
Yeah, that's true. The list price is, I think, $14.99. You can get it for $10, I think, everywhere. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, at least online. I'm not sure what the discounts are in the actual brick and mortar stores, but basically it's a $10 book. You can also get Kindle versions, iBooks versions. So Kindle, EPUB. if you order from Peach Pit, you can get a PDF version. I'm pretty sure. EPUB, it's everywhere. So, which is great.
And we would expect to be, since it's a book about the iPad, it should be available on the iPad in as many formats as possible.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so you've written now 2 books, and by the way, I did want to mention the iPad for photographers. We just talked about that a couple episodes ago of MacVoicesTV. So if you are new to the iPad and particularly into photography, go back, because Jeff had some really good advice and thought-provoking ideas on things that you should be doing and paying attention to. But should I ask what next, or is this like Apple where you don't disclose future projects?
I can probably disclose that I'm talking about updating my Mac OS X book for Mountain Lion. So I think that's sort of my next project, just because the new one's coming up. It's not super secret. Apple has said it's going to be late summer, whatever that means, July, August, September. We don't know. It's Apple, but yeah, that's what I'm starting to focus on, and just but the usual things, writing for Tidbits, writing for the Seattle Times, Photoshop Elements Techniques. I'm a freelance writer, so I spread myself too thin.
Yeah, well, which one of us don't in today's world? But
yeah, exactly.
Well, Jeff, thanks a lot for the time. It's been
Absolutely.
interesting. It's always fun, and we'll look forward to the next one. And hopefully, we won't have to wait for Mountain Lion. We'll get you back on the Mac Jury or somewhere, because there's a lot of stuff out there to talk about and learn. Yeah.
Well, and also Apple's been kind of quiet lately, so something's bound to come out soon.
The calm before the storm.
Exactly.
Yep. Folks, that's Jeff Carlson. He is the author of the brand new iPad Pocket Guide, 3rd edition from Peach Pit. Please check it out. I think it will help you get the most out of your iPad, even if you're fairly familiar. There's some good stuff in there. And there he is. That we should take a picture of that and hang it on the wall.
There we go.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Anyway, check the show notes. We'll have links to Jeff's book in all its forms, to the apps he mentioned, to the edition of Mac Voices where he was talking about the iPad for photographers. Everything Jeff does, everything I do, everything that you need to know. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Mac Voices TV is part of the Mac Voices Group and a member of Mac Level 10.